Have you ever been forced to apologize for being right? For having professional standards? For refusing to work for free just because someone married into your family? I'm Tori Mitchell, and what happened at my mother-in-law's charity gala changed my family forever. For 8 years, I was the little architect who played with drawings, while my wealthy mother-in-law, Margaret Whitmore, treated my career like a hobby. But when she demanded I design her $5 million mansion for free, and my own father threatened to throw me out for refusing, something inside me finally snapped. What I revealed in front of 500 of Boston's elite didn't just change how they saw me. It destroyed everything Margaret had built her reputation on. If you're watching this, please subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. It all started 8 years ago when I married into the Whitmore family. 8 years. That's how long I'd been part of the Whitmore dynasty, though part of might be generous. I'm a licensed architect at Mitchell & Associates in downtown Boston. Yes, same last name, but no relation to the founding partners. Pure coincidence that sometimes worked in my favor, sometimes against. My husband James is a corporate lawyer, the only son of Margaret Whitmore. If you've been to any charity gala in Boston in the last decade, you've probably seen her, perfectly coiffed silver hair, always in Chanel, and a smile that never quite reaches her eyes when she looks at me. Margaret inherited roughly $200 million from her late husband's pharmaceutical empire. Old money, the kind that comes with expectations and judgments about everyone who enters their orbit. From day one, she made it clear I didn't measure up. While James practiced real law at Winston & Associates, I just drew pretty pictures. She once introduced me at the Boston Symphony Orchestra fundraiser as James's wife who draws houses for fun. The woman standing next to her, wife of a federal judge, actually winced in sympathy. But here's what Margaret never bothered to learn. I graduated summa cum laude from MIT's School of Architecture. I spent 3 years at Foster Plus Partners in London before coming back to Boston. My pretty pictures included the redesign of the Beacon Hill Public Library that won the 2022 AIA Honor Award. Not that she ever asked. The pattern was always the same. Family dinners where she'd ask James about his latest cases while suggesting I try her personal trainer, since you have so much free time. Thanksgiving where she'd seat me with the children because you're so good at keeping them entertained with your drawings. And through it all, my parents took her side. The Thanksgiving incident of 2023 should have been my wake-up call. Margaret had invited 40 guests to her Wellesley estate, and somehow my place card ended up at the children's table, again. When I quietly moved to sit with my husband, she announced to the entire room, "Oh, Tori, I thought you'd prefer being with the little ones. You're always so playful with your work." James said nothing. Just squeezed my hand under the table like that was enough. My parents were worse. That night, my father David pulled me aside in Margaret's marble foyer. "Don't make waves, Tori. The Whitmores have been very generous to this family." Generous. As if letting their son marry me was charity work. My mother Linda added her own wisdom. "Marriage is about compromise, sweetheart. Margaret comes from a different generation. She doesn't understand these modern career women." This from a woman who'd worked as a nurse for 30 years before retiring. The pattern repeated at James's 35th birthday last March. Margaret hired an event planner, a caterer, a full jazz quartet, then introduced me to her friends as someone who keeps herself busy with her little architecture hobby. One woman actually asked if I sold my drawings on Etsy. I'd just won the AIA Honor Award 2 months before. My picture was in the Boston Globe's Sunday edition. The project was featured in Architectural Digest. But in Margaret's world, none of that existed. In her world, I was just the middle-class girl who'd somehow snagged her Princeton-educated son. But everything changed 3 months ago when a single email arrived in my inbox. An email that would eventually bring Margaret's carefully constructed world crashing down around her. August 15th, 2024. I remember the exact time, 2:47 p.m. because I was in the middle of reviewing blueprints when my phone buzzed. The email was from Robert Smith, CEO of the Horizon Foundation. They were launching a nationwide competition for their new $50 million art center in Boston's Seaport District. Anonymous submissions only, best design wins. I almost deleted it. After years of being dismissed as a hobbyist, part of me had started believing it. But something made me click through to the requirements. They wanted innovation, sustainability, a building that would redefine Boston's cultural landscape. I spent 3 weeks on that proposal. Every night after James went to bed, every weekend he golfed with clients, I worked. I submitted my design under just my firm's name and project number, no personal identifiers per competition rules. September 20th, another email. I'd won. The design fee alone was $2.5 million. But here's the part that would later matter most. Contract Clause 7.3 explicitly stated that the architect's identity would remain confidential until the public announcement on November 15, 2024, at the Foundation's annual gala. I signed that contract with shaking hands. For the first time in 8 years, I had something that was entirely mine, something Margaret couldn't diminish or dismiss. I told no one except James, and even he didn't grasp the full significance. "That's great, honey," he'd said, barely looking up from his laptop. "Just make sure it doesn't interfere with Mom's charity events." I kept every email from Robert, every contract revision, every piece of correspondence that proved this was my design, my work, my achievement. I had no idea then how desperately I'd need that proof. November 10th, 5 days before the Horizon Gala. Margaret called me directly, which should have been my first warning. She never called me without James as a buffer. "Tori, darling," she began, her voice dripping with fake sweetness, "I have the most wonderful opportunity for you. I'm building a new estate in Nantucket, 5 bedrooms, ocean views, the works. I immediately thought of you. You could finally design something significant." I felt a flutter of hope. Maybe she was finally recognizing my work. "That sounds like an amazing project, Margaret. My firm's rate for residential projects that size typically—" "Rate?" She laughed, that tinkling sound that meant someone was about to be put in their place. "Oh, Tori, family doesn't charge family, especially when you're not even that busy. James mentioned you've been home every evening this week." $5 million worth of construction. At least 6 months of design work. Free. "Margaret, I appreciate you thinking of me, but I can't take on a project that size without compensation. It wouldn't be professional." "Professional?" Her voice turned ice cold. "You want to charge me? After everything this family has done for you? I've already told the ladies at the club that my daughter-in-law is designing it. The Van Dorens are using that fancy firm from New York, but I said my Tori is just as talented. Don't embarrass me now." The deadline she wanted? 2 weeks. Initial designs ready by November 24th, right after the Horizon Gala I couldn't tell her about. "I'm sorry, Margaret, but I can't." She hung up on me. Within an hour, my phone was exploding with calls from my parents. Margaret had called them crying, saying I'd insulted her generosity and thrown her kindness back in her face. The family group chat exploded first. James messaged from his office. "Mom's really upset. Can't you just do a few sketches? It's not that big a deal." Not that big a deal. 6 months of free work wasn't a big deal to a man who billed $800 an hour. Then came the phone calls. My mother first, her voice pitched with anxiety. "Tori, what did you say to Margaret? She's devastated. She was trying to include you, to give you a chance to prove yourself to her friends." "Mom, she wants me to work for free. Would you have worked 6 months at the hospital without pay? That's different. This is family. And frankly, with the connections the Whitmores have, you should be grateful for the exposure." My father was worse. He showed up at my office the next morning, using his retirement badge to get past security. He'd been Boston PD for 30 years and still had friends everywhere. "We need to talk," he said, closing my office door behind him. "You're being ungrateful and selfish. Margaret Whitmore has welcomed you into her family." "Welcomed me?" "Dad, she introduces me as someone who plays with drawings." "Because you keep giving her reasons to doubt you. First, you refuse to quit working after marriage like she expected. Then you insist on keeping your maiden name professionally. Now you're embarrassing our entire family." That evening, they called a family meeting at my parents' house in Quincy. "Mandatory attendance," Dad's text said. James drove us there in silence, his jaw clenched the entire ride. The moment we walked in, I knew it was an ambush. Margaret was already there, dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief. The stage was set for my complete capitulation. Dad's next words broke my heart. "Apologize to Margaret right now, or get out of my house." My father stood in his living room, arms crossed, looking at me like I was 16 again and had broken curfew. Except I was 32, an award-winning architect, and being demanded to apologize for having professional boundaries. "David, please," I started, but he cut me off. "No, I'm done with your attitude, Tori. This woman," he gestured to Margaret, who was now openly crying, "has done nothing but try to help you, and you throw it in her face. You've always been too proud, too stubborn, just like when you insisted on that expensive college instead of staying local." MIT, he was calling MIT, that expensive college. My mother sat next to Margaret, rubbing her back. "We raised you better than this, Tori. Family supports family. Margaret is offering you the opportunity of a lifetime, and you're spitting on it." I looked at James, hoping for any sign of support. He was studying his phone, avoiding eye contact entirely. "She wants 6 months of free labor," I said quietly. "Would any of you work for free for 6 months?" "You work from home half the time anyway," Margaret interjected, her tears mysteriously dried. "It's not like you're performing surgery or arguing cases before the Supreme Court. You draw on a computer. How hard could it be to draw my house while you're doing whatever it is you do all day?" That's when I understood. They didn't see me as a professional. They never had. To them, I was playing architect the way children play house. "Fine," I said, my voice steady despite the rage building in my chest. "I'll apologize, publicly, at your charity gala on the 15th. Margaret's eyes lit up. She had no idea what she'd just agreed to. "If you've ever been told your career is just a hobby, or been expected to work for free because it's family, type I understand in the comments below. I see you, and your work has value, no matter what anyone says." Before we get to what happened at that gala, and trust me, you won't believe how this plays out, please hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. What Margaret didn't know about that charity event she was so proud of hosting is about to change everything. Let's continue. November 13th, 2 days before the gala. I sat in my home office at 3 a.m., reviewing every document for the 100th time. The Horizon Foundation contract lay open on my desk, Clause 7.3 highlighted in yellow. "The identity of the selected architect shall remain confidential until the official announcement at the Foundation's annual gala, November 15, 2024. My phone buzzed. An email from Robert Smith confirming the announcement schedule. They'd reveal the winning architect at 8:30 p.m., right after Margaret's speech about her charitable contributions. The irony wasn't lost on me. I printed everything in triplicate. The contract, the email chain with Robert discussing design modifications, the competition results, even the Boston Globe article about my AIA Honor Award, just in case. Each set went into a Navy folder. Professional, understated, bulletproof. Margaret called that afternoon, her voice bright with anticipation. 500 confirmed guests, Tori. The mayor, 3 congressmen, and practically every major donor in Boston. I do hope you'll dress appropriately. Formal, but not too flashy. You know how you sometimes overdo things." I knew exactly what I'd wear. The same black power suit I'd worn to receive my AIA award. The one that made me look like exactly what I was, a serious professional. James watched me prepare from the doorway. What's with all the folders? Insurance, I said, not looking up. Tori, please don't do anything stupid. This is Mom's biggest event of the year. The Whitmore Foundation is announcing something major. If only he knew how major. That night, I discovered something that changed everything. While reviewing the Horizon Foundation's website, I saw they'd added a new banner, announcing the Whitmore Foundation Arts Center partnership. Margaret had somehow attached her name to my project without knowing who designed it. November 14th, the day before everything changed. My phone hadn't stopped ringing since dawn. James cornered me in the kitchen during breakfast. Mom's invited the entire Horizon Foundation board to sit at our table. Please, Tori, whatever you're planning, don't. Just apologize quietly and let her have her night. I promised I'd apologize publicly, didn't I? His face went pale. That's what I'm afraid of. My father called during lunch. Your mother bought a new dress for tonight. Don't ruin this for her, Tori. Just say you're sorry and move on. It's 3 words. How hard can it be? 3 words. 8 years of dismissal, and he wanted me to fix it with 3 words. Margaret sent a text at 3 p.m. The Van Dorens will be there tonight. After you apologize, I'll introduce you as the architect designing my Nantucket estate. Try to sound professional. At 4 p.m., an unexpected email arrived from Robert Smith. Looking forward to tomorrow's announcement, the board is particularly excited to meet our winning architect. We've prepared a special presentation showcasing your design process. The mayor specifically requested to sit near you during dinner. I stared at that email for a full minute. Margaret had no idea she'd arranged her own public humiliation. That evening, I stood before my closet, running my fingers over the black suit. James walked in, already in his tuxedo. You look beautiful, he said softly. I know Mom can be difficult, but she means well. She just shows love differently. By demanding 6 months of free labor? He sighed. By trying to include you in her world. Her world. Tomorrow night, her world would discover exactly who I was in mine. I didn't know Margaret had one more card to play. November 15th, 7:00 p.m. The Ritz-Carlton Boston blazed with light as our car pulled up to the valet. Through the glass doors, I could see the who's who of Boston society. Mayor Richardson, the Kennedys, the Massachusetts branch. At least 3 Fortune 500 CEOs, and enough old money to fund a small country. Margaret stood in the lobby like a queen receiving subjects, resplendent in cream Chanel with her signature pearls. She air-kissed guests while subtly ranking their importance by the warmth of her greeting. There you are, she said when she spotted us, her eyes scanning my outfit with barely concealed disapproval. I suppose that suit will do. The Van Dorens just arrived. Try not to mention your little library project. They're building with Herzog and de Meuron. As we entered the ballroom, I stopped breathing for a moment. There, spanning the entire back wall, was a 30-foot banner. The Whitmore Foundation presents The Future of Boston Arts. Below it, in smaller text, announcing the Whitmore Arts Center at Horizon Foundation. My design, my $50 million design, was displayed on screens throughout the room with Margaret's name plastered across it. Impressive, isn't it? Margaret appeared at my elbow. I've been working with Horizon for months on this. Of course, I can't reveal all the details yet, but let's just say the Whitmore name will be synonymous with Boston culture for generations. James squeezed my hand, a warning. But I was looking across the room at Robert Smith, who stood near the podium checking his watch. He caught my eye and nodded slightly, then looked at Margaret with an expression I couldn't quite read. The banner showed my design with her name. In 2 hours, that would change everything. 8:15 p.m. Margaret clinked her champagne glass, and 500 conversations stopped. She glided to the podium like she was born to it, which arguably she was. Good evening, everyone. As you know, the Whitmore family has been dedicated to Boston's cultural development for 3 generations. She paused for effect, scanning the room to ensure all eyes were on her. Tonight, I'm thrilled to announce that tradition continues with the Whitmore Arts Center, a $50 million project that will transform the Seaport District. Applause rippled through the crowd. I watched my design rotate on the screens, every line, every angle I'd labored over for weeks, now branded with her name. I've personally overseen every aspect of this visionary project, Margaret continued, her voice swelling with pride. From conception to execution, this has been my passion for the past year. The Whitmore Foundation has already committed $10 million to ensure this becomes the crown jewel of Boston's cultural scene. My mother beamed from table 3. My father nodded approvingly. James shifted uncomfortably beside me. The design you see here, Margaret gestured to the screens, represents not just architecture but a philosophy. My philosophy of bringing world-class culture to our beloved city. That's when Robert Smith stood up from his seat at the Horizon Foundation table. He walked toward the podium with measured steps, his iPad in hand. Margaret smiled, clearly thinking he was coming to praise her. "Mrs. Whitmore," he said quietly, though the microphone picked up every word. "I believe there's been a misunderstanding. According to our contract, we need to announce the actual architect now. Clause 7.3 specifically states—" Margaret's smile flickered but held. She had no idea what was coming. Then Robert Smith walked up to the microphone. "Thank you, Mrs. Whitmore, for that enthusiastic introduction," Robert said, his diplomatic tone barely masking his confusion. "However, I need to clarify something for our guests and apparently for you as well." Margaret's smile tightened. She stepped closer to the podium, trying to reclaim control. "Of course, Robert. I was just about to introduce our wonderful partnership. The Horizon Foundation ran a blind competition for this design," Robert continued, now addressing the audience directly. "The winning architect's identity has been confidential under Contract Clause 7.3 until this moment. Mrs. Whitmore, while a generous donor, was not involved in the design process." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Margaret's face flushed, but she recovered quickly. "There must be some confusion. I've been working closely with the foundation." Robert pulled up his iPad, the contract clearly visible on the screen behind him now. "The architect bound by confidentiality until tonight is present in this room. Per our agreement, it's time to reveal their identity." Margaret actually stepped toward the microphone, clearly expecting Robert to say her name, or perhaps someone she'd hired. The room held its breath. "The lead architect for the Horizon Foundation Arts Center, who won our competition with a truly visionary design, is—" I stood up. The navy folder was already in my hand. "That would be me, Mr. Smith." 500 heads turned in unison. My mother's champagne glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the marble floor. My father's face went from confusion to rage to shock in the span of 3 seconds. Margaret's carefully composed expression cracked completely. "This is ridiculous! She's lying!" But I was already walking toward the stage, my heels clicking against the marble with metronomic precision. The actual architect is bound by confidentiality until this moment. The walk to that podium felt like a mile, but I kept my shoulders back, my stride confident. This was my moment, 8 years in the making. "Good evening, everyone," I said into the microphone, my voice carrying clear and strong. "I'm Tori Mitchell, principal architect at Mitchell & Associates, member of the American Institute of Architects. This project," I gestured to the screen still displaying my design, "commenced August 15, 2024, when I won the Horizon Foundation's blind competition." I opened my navy folder and pulled out the contract, holding it up for the room to see. The official seal of the Horizon Foundation caught the light. "This is ridiculous!" Margaret's voice cracked as she grabbed for the microphone. "She's my daughter-in-law. She's just trying to embarrass me. She doesn't even have real clients." "Mrs. Whitmore," Robert interrupted gently but firmly, "I can confirm that Ms. Mitchell won our competition fairly. Her submission was extraordinary. We have the entire selection process documented." Gasps rippled through the audience. Phones appeared in hands, subtle at first, then openly recording. The Van Dorens, whom Margaret had been so eager to impress, leaned forward with undisguised interest. "You want me to design your Nantucket house for free?" I said. turning to face Margaret directly. You demanded 6 months of my professional services as a family favor. You made that demand on November 10th. I pulled out another document. 4 days ago. Nearly 3 months after I'd already been working on this $50 million project. Margaret's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Behind her, the screens continued to display my design, my name now appearing at the bottom as Robert updated the presentation in real time. Lead architect, Tori Mitchell, AIA. Robert connected his iPad to the main screen, and suddenly, the entire email chain was visible to 500 of Boston's elite. Ms. Mitchell's submission was selected unanimously by our board on September 20th. Every communication, every design revision, every timestamp is documented here. I pulled out the next document from my folder. This email, dated November 10th at 4:47 p.m., shows Margaret demanding I design her mansion for free because, quote, family doesn't charge family, especially when you're not even that busy. The crowd was no longer pretending to be discreet. The mayor's wife was openly filming. A reporter from the Boston Globe had her notebook out. Not that busy? I continued, my voice steady as steel. I've been working 60-hour weeks on your passion project, Margaret, the one you just claimed to have personally overseen. There's been a misunderstanding, Margaret stammered, her composure crumbling. I meant I oversaw the funding, the conceptual. Mrs. Whitmore, Robert interjected. You told the board last week that you had been intimately involved in the design process. That's why we allowed the Whitmore name on the center. Mayor Richardson stood up from his table. Ms. Mitchell, I remember your library redesign. Exceptional work. I had no idea you were behind this project as well. Thank you, Mayor Richardson. I'm particularly proud of the sustainable elements. The solar panel integration alone will reduce energy costs by 40%. Margaret tried one last desperate attempt. She's lying. Check the records. There's no way she could have. Every detail, I said, clicking to the next slide Robert had prepared, showing my design process with timestamps. Every line created while being told I'm just playing with drawings. The room was dead silent now. 500 people watching Boston's social hierarchy crumble in real time. Margaret, I said, turning to face her fully, for 8 years you've introduced me as someone who draws houses for fun. You've seated me at children's tables. You've told your friends I'm playing at having a career while your son does real work. She started to speak, but I raised my hand. Tonight, you demanded I apologize. So let me be clear, in front of everyone here. I paused, making eye contact with as many people as possible. I do apologize. Margaret's face lit up with desperate hope. I apologize for allowing you to believe my professional worth was negotiable. I apologize for not setting boundaries sooner. I apologize for every time I stayed silent while you diminished my accomplishments to make yourself feel superior. The crowd collectively held its breath. I apologize to every young professional in this room who's been told their work doesn't matter because it doesn't fit someone else's narrow definition of success. Your work has value. Your time has value. You have value. But most of all, Margaret, I apologize for letting you think that family means free labor, that love means accepting disrespect, that keeping peace means keeping quiet. I pulled out the final document from my folder. This is the AIA Honor Award I won for the Beacon Hill Library renovation, the project you've never once acknowledged, the achievement that happened while you were telling everyone I was playing with drawings. Someone started clapping, then another. Within seconds, half the room was applauding. Margaret stood frozen at the podium, her carefully constructed world collapsing around her. I believe you owe my wife an apology. Everyone turned. James had stood up from our table. The chairman of the Horizon Foundation Board, William Thornton, rose from his seat. His voice carried the authority of someone who'd run board meetings for 3 decades. Mrs. Whitmore, this is highly irregular. You assured us of your intimate involvement in this project. If there's been misrepresentation, there's no misrepresentation. Margaret's voice pitched higher, desperate. I've donated $10 million. The Whitmore name was given based on your claimed involvement in the design, Thornton interrupted. If you've misled the board, we'll need to review our partnership agreement. Section 12 clearly states that any misrepresentation of involvement is grounds for immediate termination. The crowd was riveted. This wasn't just social embarrassment anymore. This was potential legal liability. Robert added, "The press release goes out Monday. We need to clarify the architect's identity immediately. Ms. Mitchell's name must be properly credited, or we risk professional ethics violations with the AIA." Margaret turned to me, her eyes pleading. For the first time in 8 years, she looked at me like I had power. "Tori, please, we can work this out privately." Privately? I gestured to the screen still showing my work. "You made this public when you claimed my work as your own. You made this public when you demanded I apologize for having professional standards." A woman from the Boston Globe raised her hand. "Ms. Mitchell, will you be pursuing action for intellectual property theft?" Before I could answer, Thornton spoke again. "Mrs. Whitmore, you have 2 choices. Publicly acknowledge Ms. Mitchell as the sole architect and maintain your naming rights as a donor only, or we terminate the partnership entirely and return your donation." The room waited. Margaret's face cycled through emotions: rage, humiliation, defeat. My father stood up from his table. My father started walking toward the stage, his face flushed red with either anger or embarrassment, possibly both. The crowd parted like the Red Sea, everyone sensing another explosion coming. He made it halfway before stopping. Maybe it was the 3 news cameras now openly filming. Maybe it was Mayor Richardson watching with raised eyebrows. Or maybe it was seeing his daughter standing on that stage, finally refusing to shrink. "Tori," he started, his voice carrying across the silent ballroom. "Not now, Dad," I said into the microphone. "For once, this isn't about what you think is best for everyone else." My mother grabbed his arm, whispering urgently. I could read her lips. "Not here, David, everyone's watching." And for the first time in my life, I watched my father realize his own hypocrisy. He'd spent 30 years demanding respect as a police officer, but couldn't give his own daughter the same courtesy for her profession. That's when James spoke again, louder this time. "Mom, you owe my wife an apology. A real one. Now." Margaret turned to her son, shock written across her face. "James, you can't possibly—" 8 years, Mom. 8 years of watching you belittle the woman I love. I kept quiet because I thought keeping peace was more important than keeping faith with my wife. I was wrong. He looked at me, his eyes glistening. I was so wrong, and I'm sorry. The Van Dorens were whispering excitedly. The mayor's wife had stopped filming, too captivated to hold her phone steady. Even the waitstaff had frozen, trays balanced in their hands. Margaret looked around the room, at the board members waiting for her response, at the cameras recording everything, at her son choosing his wife over her manipulation. Can you imagine standing in Margaret's designer shoes right now? 500 of Boston's most powerful people waiting to see if she'll do the right thing? What would you want her to say? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If this story is resonating with you, if you've ever had to stand up to family members who didn't respect your worth, please share this video. Someone in your life might need to hear that their professional value isn't negotiable, not even for family. Now, let's see how Margaret responds when she has no choice but to face the truth. Margaret's apology, when it finally came, was barely audible. "I apologize for the misunderstanding about the design credits." "Louder, Mom," James said from the floor. "Everyone should hear this." She gripped the podium, knuckles white. "I apologize to Tori Mitchell for misrepresenting her involvement in the Horizon Arts Center project. She is the sole architect." Then she fled. The woman who'd never left a party before midnight, who lived for these gatherings, actually ran from her own gala in her designer heels. The sound of her footsteps echoed through the stunned silence. Within seconds, the room exploded. 3 different firms' representatives approached me with business cards. The Van Dorens wanted to discuss their new Cape Cod estate. The mayor's chief of staff mentioned a municipal project in development, but the real vindication came from my phone. James showed me his screen. Someone had already posted a video on Twitter. Boston socialite exposed for stealing daughter-in-law's design had 50,000 views in the first hour. The Boston Globe reporter cornered me by the champagne table. "Ms. Mitchell, this is extraordinary. Would you be willing to do an exclusive interview about women in architecture and family dynamics in professional settings?" "Next week," I said, still processing everything. "Call my office." My office, where tomorrow I'd return not as someone who played with drawings, but as the architect of Boston's newest landmark. Robert Smith found me in the crowd. "Ms. Mitchell, the board is impressed by your composure. We'd like to increase your fee by $500,000 for the inconvenience and publicity challenges this has created." Around us, Boston's elite were already choosing sides. Some flocked to my parents' table offering hollow sympathy. Others made sure to catch my eye, nodding their approval. The next morning, my phone showed 47 missed calls from my father, 23 from my mother, 1 from Margaret, a voicemail I deleted without listening. The text from my mother read, "You humiliated us in front of everyone we know. How could you do this to your family?" I typed back, "The same way you've done it to me for 8 years, publicly." James brought me coffee in bed, something he hadn't done since our honeymoon. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I should have defended you years ago. I thought I was keeping peace, but I was just keeping you down." "Why now?" I asked. "Why speak up last night?" "Because I finally saw it. Really saw it. The way Mom's face changed when she realized you had power she couldn't dismiss. She's done that to people my whole life, and I just let her." My phone buzzed. A text from Margaret. "The Whitmore Foundation is withdrawing the donation. I hope you're satisfied." Robert Smith called an hour later. "The Horizon Foundation will cover the full funding. We've actually had 3 new donors come forward this morning, inspired by your story. The Arts Center will proceed as planned, with your name prominently displayed as lead architect." That afternoon, my father appeared at our house. James answered the door. "I need to speak to my daughter." "She'll decide if she wants to speak to you," James replied, and I felt a surge of love for this man who was finally standing up for me. I let him in. He sat on our couch looking older than his 60 years. "Your mother's devastated," he started. "I'm not responsible for Mom's feelings about my boundaries." He stared at me like he was seeing me for the first time. Within a week, my professional life exploded in ways I'd never imagined. 5 architecture firms in Boston reached out with partnership offers. The American Institute of Architects New England chapter invited me to keynote their spring conference on Integrity in Design, When Personal and Professional Boundaries Intersect. The Boston Globe article ran with the headline, "The Architect Who Stood Up: How Tory Mitchell's Gala Revelation Exposed Boston's Old Money Hypocrisy." They used a photo of me at the podium, Margaret's shocked face blurred in the background. 3 new clients signed contracts totaling $30 million in projects. The Van Dorens insisted I design their Cape Cod estate, at my full rate, they emphasized repeatedly. A tech CEO who'd attended the gala wanted a modernist home in Cambridge, saying, "I want to work with someone who has backbone." The Horizon Foundation increased my fee by $500,000 as promised, bringing the total to $3 million. Robert Smith personally ensured my name appeared on every document, every press release, every sign at the construction site. But the sweetest vindication came from an unexpected source. Margaret's social circle began to fracture. 3 of her closest friends quietly reached out to me for design consultations, making it clear they'd always thought Margaret was a bit much. The charity circuit that had been her kingdom suddenly had a new topic of gossip, and it wasn't flattering to her. James's law firm, which had always treated me as an accessory at firm events, suddenly wanted to feature our power couple status in their newsletter. I declined. I didn't need their validation anymore. My former library project, the one that won the AIA Honor Award, received a surge of attention. Architectural Digest called, wanting to do a retrospective feature. 2 weeks after the gala, I sent an email to my family, CC'd to James and my attorney. Yes, I'd hired one, just to make the point crystal clear. Subject: terms for moving forward. The email was brief but non-negotiable. 1. My professional decisions will never be subject to family discussion or vote. My career is not a democracy. 2. Any family member who wants my professional services will go through my office, sign a contract, and pay my standard rate. No exceptions. 3. Respect for my work is mandatory, not optional. Any comments diminishing my career result in immediate end of contact. 4. Margaret. A public written apology in the Boston Globe is required before any future interaction. This is not about humiliation, it's about accountability. 5. Future grandchildren will not spend unsupervised time with anyone who can't respect their mother's profession. These aren't suggestions, they're requirements. You have 1 week to respond. My father called within an hour. You can't be serious. These demands. Requirements, Dad, and yes, I'm completely serious. I've been serious about my career for 15 years. You're just finally listening. Your mother won't accept this. She's already told her book club you're having some kind of breakdown. Then Mom can explain to her book club why she won't be seeing her future grandchildren. Silence. Then, you're pregnant? Not yet. But when I am, that child will grow up knowing their mother's work has value, non-negotiable. Margaret's lawyer sent a cease and desist about the gala video, which my lawyer found amusing. She has no grounds. Everything that happened was in public, at her own event. She can't suppress reality. James backed every word. These are our boundaries, Dad, he told David when he tried to circumvent me. Accept them or don't, but they're not changing. Day 3. Post-email. My father showed up at Mitchell & Associates during lunch. The receptionist called up. There's a David Mitchell here? Says he's your father? He doesn't have an appointment. If he'd like to schedule one, he can email me. I watched on the security monitor as he argued with her for 5 minutes before security escorted him out. The woman who'd been dismissed as playing with drawings now had a security team that took her seriously. Day 4. Margaret sent her lawyer with a compromise. She'd acknowledge me as the architect if I signed an NDA about the gala incident. My lawyer laughed out loud during the call. Mrs. Whitmore wants to buy silence she can't legally enforce? That video has 2 million views. That ship hasn't just sailed, it's circumnavigated the globe. Day 5. My mother tried emotional warfare through my aunt. Linda's not eating. She's so depressed. You're killing your mother. Mom survived worse, I told my aunt. She'll survive accountability too. Day 6. James's grandmother called him. Even Margaret's own mother had seen the video. Tell Tori I'm proud of her. Someone needed to put Margaret in her place. Should have been me 40 years ago. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Margaret, faced with social exile and a son who wouldn't return her calls, finally cracked. Not from remorse, but from pragmatism. Her social standing was hemorrhaging. The spring charity season was approaching, and suddenly she wasn't getting the usual invitations. Fine, her message said. I'll do the Globe apology, but I want input on the wording. No input, I replied. Full accountability or full no contact, your choice. The little girl who needed their approval died at that gala. The woman who emerged had boundaries made of steel. 3 weeks after the gala, the Boston Globe ran Margaret's apology in the lifestyle section. Not front page, but visible enough. I, Margaret Whitmore, publicly apologized to Tori Mitchell for misrepresenting her professional achievements and taking credit for her architectural design of the Horizon Arts Center. Ms. Mitchell is an accomplished architect whose work stands on its own merit. I regret my actions and the lack of respect I've shown for her career over the past 8 years. 63 words that must have cost her more than the 10 million she'd withdrawn from Horizon. James read it over breakfast, shaking his head. It's not heartfelt, but it's public record. That's all I need, I said. Documentation. My mother called that afternoon. Are you satisfied? Margaret's humiliated. She can barely show her face at the club. She can show her face whenever she wants, Mom. She just has to do it with accountability. The real breakthrough came a week later. My father sent a text. I was wrong. You're not the daughter I raised. You're better, stronger. I'm trying to understand that. It wasn't an apology, but it was a crack in the wall. James started therapy to understand his role in enabling his mother. I thought I was being a good son, he told me after his third session. But I was being a terrible husband. The therapist called it toxic peacekeeping. Margaret maintained radio silence except for required family business. When she had to reference me, she used my full title. My daughter-in-law, Tori Mitchell, AIA. Every time, like swallowing glass, but she did it. The architecture community rallied around me. Women especially reached out with their own stories of dismissal, of being told their work was just a hobby, progress, slow, uncomfortable, but real. 3 months after the gala, we attempted our first family dinner. Neutral ground. A restaurant, public enough to enforce civility, private enough to talk. Margaret arrived in understated Armani instead of her usual Chanel armor. She sat across from me, maintaining eye contact for exactly 3 seconds before looking at her menu. The Dover sole is excellent here, she said to no one in particular. Thank you for the recommendation, Margaret, I replied, matching her formal tone. My parents sat stiffly, my mother clutching her purse like a life preserver. My father studied his water glass with detective-level intensity. So, James broke the silence, Tori's firm just won the contract for the new biotech campus in Kendall Square. Congratulations, Margaret said, the words sounding freshly learned. That's impressive. It was painful. Every sentence carefully measured, every topic vetted for safety. We discussed the weather, the Red Sox, anything but the previous 8 years, or the gala that changed everything. When the check came, Margaret reached for it. Allow me to celebrate Tori's new contract. My parents exchanged glances. This was new territory, Margaret acknowledging my success without diminishing it. Thank you, I said simply. We weren't close. We might never be close. But we were civil, and that was enough. The woman who'd tried to erase my professional identity now had to acknowledge it every time she saw me. The parents who'd demanded I sacrifice my dignity for family harmony now had to accept my boundaries or lose access to their daughter. As we left the restaurant, Margaret paused. The Arts Center groundbreaking is next month. You'll be speaking, I assume? Yes, as lead architect. She nodded once, sharply. I'll be there, in the audience, where she belonged. 1 year later, I stood in my own firm's conference room, Mitchell Architecture, established 6 months after the gala, 5 employees, 3 major projects, and a view of the harbor I'd dreamed about since architecture school. The Horizon Arts Center had won the Progressive Architecture Award. The ceremony photos showed me at the podium, the building model beside me, my name engraved on the plaque. Margaret had attended, sitting in row 5, applauding appropriately when my name was called. James walked in with lunch and news. You're not going to believe this. Mom just called. She wants to hire your firm for the Nantucket house. At my full rate? She specifically said at market rate and asked how to submit a proper RFP. I laughed, really laughed. The woman who'd demanded 6 months of free labor was now following protocol. That afternoon, my father called. Tori, I wanted you to know. I've been telling people about your firm. Proudly, I was wrong, sweetheart. You didn't need our approval. You needed our respect. I'm sorry it took me so long to see that. 8 months pregnant now. I rubbed my belly as I looked out at Boston's skyline. This child would grow up in a different world. One where their mother's work was valued, where boundaries were healthy, where family harmony wasn't built on one person's silence. The gala video had finally stopped circulating, but its impact remained. I'd become inadvertently famous in architecture circles as the woman who stood up. Speaking engagements, mentorship requests, young architects seeking advice on dealing with dismissive families. My phone buzzed. A text from Margaret. Congratulations on the Kendall Square groundbreaking. Saw the Globe article. You looked very professional. I learned that family harmony built on one person's sacrifice isn't harmony at all. It's just oppression with a pretty name. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever had to fight for your professional worth to be recognized by your own family, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Your work has value, your time has value, you have value, no matter what anyone says. Subscribe for more stories about standing up, speaking out, and setting boundaries that protect your peace. Drop a comment about your own experience with family and professional boundaries. I read every single one. Remember, respect isn't negotiable, especially not for family harmony. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next story.